Hello and welcome to Guitar Tips. My name is Adam Levy, and this is my video blog series here on YouTube. A few days ago, I posted a video asking for questions because I wanted to make a Q&A video. This is that Q&A video. I got so many questions, really great questions. There's no way I could answer them all in one video. I mean, I could, but it would be the longest video. It would be unimaginably long if I really got into all of these. So I'm just going to answer a few questions here. Thank you for everybody who submitted a question. Ones that I don't get to here, I will do my best to answer just in the comments where you originally posted your questions. And maybe I'll save some of these for a later Q&A video as well. So, without further ado, here's some questions and some answers. George Harvey writes, triad pairs, what's the deal? Okay, so let's say you want to express E Lydian. You've got this, somebody's playing some kind of E major chord and you want to play an E Lydian sound. So one thing you could do is just play the scale. But a more kind of fresh sound or surprising sound can come from thinking about pairs of triads rather than just a scale. So for example, I could think about E major and F sharp major, and just play notes from those two triads and leap around a little bit. And that gives it an interesting sound. You can also just move the triads around, not melodically, but just play them as a chordal sound. And that again is giving a Lydian sound. So what's the deal? Why did I pick E major and F sharp major to express E Lydian? One thing that you need to know to think about triad pairs is the parent scales of whatever mode you're in. So the parent scale of E Lydian is B major. I just mean that E Lydian contains the same notes as B major. Right. But we start on E. And so we're kind of recontextualizing the notes of B major. B major is the parent scale of E Lydian. And once you know that, then you really could pick any two triads from B major, and they could help you express E Lydian, or for that matter, any of the other modes of B major. They could express, they could be used to express C sharp Dorian, or D sharp Phrygian, and so on. You can pick any two triads. For example, let's pick, so we'll go back to our E Lydian example, and we'll pick B and C sharp minor. It doesn't really give us that Lydian note that we want to hear, but it is a pretty sound. So that's just alternating B and C sharp minor. I could also alternate B and E. Not quite as interesting because B and E share a common tone. So a thing that you'll want to do when you're using triad pairs is to, most of the time, pick two triads that are right next to each other in the sequence, either the triads based on the first and second degree or second and third degree and so on, because any two that are right next to each other will have no common tones, and that's cool. That helps keep it interesting. Also, it's pretty standard, I think, to use the triads built off of the 4 and the 5 of the parent scale. They're always major if we're using major scale modes, and also always major if you're using melodic minor modes. And major triads are just a little easier to kind of make music kind of sweet sounds with. You don't always have to use major triads, but if you do, it's going to just, I don't know, be, I think, easier to get across. That's how I hear it. If you want to use minor triads or the diminished triads or whatever else exists within those scales, go for it. There's plenty of sounds to be discovered. But I still, if you don't want to use the one built off 4 and 5, I would adhere to the consecutive, the neighboring pairs of triads. I think that's going to be the most interesting. So that's the deal. You can play melodically, you can play chordally. If you really think about it, 2 triads with no notes in common, that's 6 notes. You're using already 6 of the 7 notes of the scale. So it seems like it might not be that different. You're just converting a 7-note scale to a 6-note scale. But by virtue of thinking of them as triads, you're going to have more intervallic, leapy sounds, and that can be fresh when you're tired of just going simply up and down the scale. Okay, George, did I answer your question? I hope so. Thought that was a good question. Let's see. TRM, somebody named Tyler, whose handle here on YouTube is TRM. He says, I have so many questions. Can I ask a few? Okay. Your favorite jazz standards and which renditions? Oh, man. That is a good question. I don't have favorite standards exactly. I really love Cole Porter, so I'm partial to his songs. I've recorded a song of his called I Love Paris. On gigs, I will often play I Concentrate on You. That's one of his tunes. I used to play a tune of his called So in Love a whole lot. I really like that one. Cole Porter, to me, just has it all. He writes, he wrote great lyrics, great melodies, great harmonies. So I don't know that I exactly have favorite jazz standards, but my go-to guy is Cole Porter. And when you ask which renditions, pretty much my starting place would be Ella Fitzgerald, her recording of the Cole Porter songbook. So if I want to learn a Cole Porter tune that I don't already know, rather than just flipping through the real book or something, I'll probably listen to Ella Fitzgerald and see how she did it. Okay, number 2, do you ever transcribe any of Bill Evans's music? Bill Evans, the pianist, I presume you mean, and not the saxophone player. I have in the past, many years ago when I lived in the Bay Area. I was living in Berkeley or Oakland or Albany. I don't remember exactly when this was, but I started a quartet and played exclusively Bill Evans's music. We just did one gig at Yoshi's. The bass player was a guy named Bill Douglas. The drummer was Scott Amendola, who you may know, who's played a lot with Charlie Hunter. The other guitar player was John Heller, really great guitar player in Berkeley. We only played one gig, and then for reasons I can't remember, we didn't continue. But for a few months there, I was just really into Bill Evans, his original tunes, and also his arrangements of standards. So yes. Number 3, do you ever take a break from the guitar or music in general? Not a whole lot. I think it's a good idea to. I don't. Just so much of my world is music. It's how I make a living. It's also what I do creatively. It's what I do socially. To really unplug completely from music and the guitar is. It's not something I've done a lot, but I'll take breaks from particular things. Like, even though I do a lot of teaching private guitar lessons, I'll take a month off, or longer sometimes, just so that I make sure that when I come back, I have fresh insights for my students, and I'm not just slipping into autopilot mode. I've taken breaks from guitar tips. I've taken breaks from different aspects, but not really a complete break from music or the guitar. Maybe I should, maybe I will. That's a good question. Number 4, your favorite instrumentalists. Oof. Well, Bill Evans is certainly one. Bill FRISELL is one. Thelonious Monk is one. Noel Akchote is one. Wow. I mean, if you asked me on a different day, or if I answered on a different day, I might come up with different people, but I think I'm always going to say Bill FRISELL. He's somebody that consistently inspires me. I've been listening to him for 30 years or something like that, and he always inspires me and continues to reinvent himself. I think that's really cool. Okay, there you go. TRM, Tyler, thanks for those questions. Alan Haney writes, what's your advice to someone with no discipline trying to learn on their own and getting overwhelmed navigating the massive amount of information available? Is there a cure for bouncing from one topic to the next? Love your posts and TrueFire courses. I'm a long-standing TrueFire member. Thanks. Well, thank you, Alan. Is there a cure for bouncing from one topic to the next? I think there's 2 cures. One is just making a spreadsheet for yourself and just deciding in advance, hey, I'm going to work on these things on these days for this much amount of time. And it can be tedious to do that, but it will focus you. Many years ago, I ran a marathon in LA, and I joined a running club, and I did this training thing, and they give you this book, and you have this calendar, and on every single day what it is you need to do as part of your training to build up to the marathon, which is months away. If I just decided, well, I'll get up and I'll run a little bit if I feel like it, maybe I'll run a little longer, a little shorter, whatever. It's like, no, that's not going to get you in shape for a marathon. And at that time, I was completely out of shape. I'd never run before in my life. So I followed that calendar pretty much, to the letter. And I ran a marathon. So that would be one way I would do it. That would be one cure, is to make yourself a calendar and just write in it the stuff you want to practice. And then you don't go on YouTube and, let yourself go down these rabbit holes. You just practice the stuff that you have set out to practice, and you do it over the course of 10 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it is. Then you can reevaluate and see where you're at and see where you want to go. That's one cure. Another cure is just time. I bounce around to a lot of different topics myself. I'll get really interested in Thelonious Monk for a week. I'll get really interested in some other thing for a week or a day or an hour or whatever. If you're doing things that really excite you and make you grow as a musician, even if you're a little scattered with them, you might not see results today or tomorrow or even next year. But time, if you stick with it, if you play guitar for years and years and years and years, hopefully those things will start to connect. Things that seem scattered over time, you'll start to make your own connections, like, oh yeah, that's related to this, and that's related to that. And that 1 week that I got really into Thelonious Monk is actually paying off much later down the road. If you really want to become a master of Monk's music, you're not going to do that by being scatterbrained. You're going to do it by being focused. But if you just want to generally grow as a musician, I think it's okay. I mean, if you think about how we grow as people, you grow a whole lot in your teenage years, and we're all really scattered then, and most of us turn out okay. Thank you, Alan. That's a good question. The next question is from Pretzels722. How do you structure a lesson plan for a guitar student? How does it differ between beginner, intermediate, advanced? Like half the lesson playing a chord song and then half the time talking theory for a beginner student? The answer is I don't have a standard way that I do it. I really do my best to just listen to what the student is saying, listen to what they're playing, and try to help them in the short term to get better at what they're working on, right then. And then I help them develop a plan to what they want to work towards. It's really different. I don't think the beginner, intermediate, and advanced stuff is as different as just people's ability to focus and be self-aware and follow a plan. Yeah, I've had beginners who were super focused. I've had advanced players who were really scattered. So I try to address the person in the room on that day where they're at, and also try to think 2 or 3 or 5 steps ahead, because that's my job, is to think ahead and help them reach their goals by kind of navigating them there. Okay, so thank you, Pretzels. Pretzels 722. Let's see. Jordan Tupper. If you could choose only one chord progression to solo over, which would it be, and why? Ooh. I hope I don't have to pick only one chord progression, but if I had to, Between the Bars by Elliott Smith is really great. I never get tired of playing over it. Why? It's a waltz, and so I like the way that the chords kind of move within the meter, and it's got kind of all of the chords that I like to get at. It's got a 4 minor chord. It's got some other kinds of harmony that I like. It's mostly diatonic, but there's a few chromatic colors that come in through. If a song is just super chromatic, like, obviously something like Giant Steps, I don't find that very fun to solo over, because I like tonal music. But if something is just really, really diatonic, then there's not a lot of push and pull. It's hard to make a lot of drama there. So a song like Between the Bars has some drama built into it and allows me to have some real cadences and tension and release and stuff. So John Udinsky Jr. As a performer and teacher, what is your advice for getting gigs and enough students to support yourself when relocating to a new city? Well, getting out of the house is really good. Go out to hear other people's gigs. Be on the scene. You don't necessarily have to advertise yourself all the time. You don't have to walk around with a t-shirt that says, I play guitar and teach guitar, ask me about it. But just get to know people. Almost every good thing that's happened for me musically has been about, getting out of the house and interacting with people. Now, that's not great for everybody. If you're not a people person, that might be challenging for you, and also not particularly effective, because maybe you're just not communicating with people and connecting with people the way that would lead to more gigs. I still would say get out of the house. You can cultivate an online presence. I hear anecdotally lots of cool stories from my friends who say, oh, I got this opportunity to go on this tour as a sideman guitar player because somebody saw me on YouTube or on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever and messaged me, and that led to this whole other thing, a tour, a record, a collaborative partnership. Honestly, even though I'm on Instagram and on YouTube, and I do communicate with people a lot, I can't think of any opportunities that have come directly through social media for me. So I can say that I haven't found that a very effective way to get gigs and support myself. It's been more effective for me to just go out and really meet people and cultivate real relationships. Try both. See what works for you. Craigslist I found to be not that useful as far as like advertising lessons on Craigslist, but I live in LA. There's a million people advertising guitar lessons on Craigslist. Maybe if you move to a smaller town and you were on Craigslist, that might be a way to get more students. in LA, I didn't find it very effective. Also, having a steady gig is really, really, really good. If you can show up and play the same place at the same time week after week after week, regardless of what the money is or whatever, that's a great way to let people know that you are in town and you're serious about the guitar. Okay, John, thanks for that. Last question, paper trail. Something I've struggled with for some time now is what to do when presented with a brief instrumental break to solo over. Let's say 8 bars at a relatively brisk tempo, as opposed to a longer time frame that I could see a solo gradually build and have a narrative arc. I seem to find it difficult to serve the song or make any sort of lasting impression in this compressed time frame. I'm primarily talking about improvising, but to be honest, I've actually found I have the same difficulty when I try to sit down and compose something. I feel like I struggle to discern whether the song needs something simple, sparse, and melodic, or fast and flashy, or that references the vocal melody or some other hook in the song, or B, struggle to execute something I'm happy with even if I have discerned the above. The first guitar break in Steely Dan's Night by Night is a quick example off the top of my head of nailing the type of thing I'm talking about. I haven't really phrased this as a question, but I'd love if you could talk about it a bit. Okay, here, how do you approach short solos? That's a good question. A lot of what we get asked to do as guitar players in the recording world anyway is to play just a little short thing. So a couple things I would say. One is start to cultivate a playlist either on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you can of great examples besides that Steely Dan song, and try to get 10 or 20 or 50 really great examples of those things and listen to them on a regular basis. Always be like kicking stuff off if it stops moving you, or adding new stuff if you find something new. So kind of train your ear to hear what a good 8 bars, what a really, really great 8-bar solo sounds like and feels like. So look for them, become a scout for those kinds of things, and listen to them regularly to kind of not brainwash yourself exactly, but just focus your imagination. That's one thing. 2, I would practice doing it. Like, if you have a looper, you could record yourself playing the progression. I'm playing acoustically, I don't have a looper right now. But let's say you're doing Love Hurts in B flat. This is said 8 bars, but I'm going to extend it so we can get through the whole form. Okay, so I've gone through the whole form. I don't know what that is. It might be 16 bars. But it goes by pretty quickly. That's about as long of a guitar solo as I think you're talking about. And I would record it on my looper with some sort of timekeeper going in the room. You don't necessarily have to record the metronome, but as long as you can hear the metronome when you're playing, so that you know that the time is honest as you play it into your looper, so that when you play it back, it's going to be solid. Unless you already know that your time is really good, then you could bypass that. But I usually recommend using some kind of metronome or timekeeper to keep your loop making as honest as possible. And then, so what I would do is alternate back and forth between playing the chords and playing an a cappella solo without hearing the chords, just playing a solo while trying to keep the chords in your mind. So it'd be 2, 3. And I'm playing kind of chords and melody at the same time, but I'm doing that hopefully so that you can hear a little bit as I go along. And go back and forth between playing the chords and improvising a solo, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And do it, half a dozen times each way. And then hit your looper and play it back and switch parts. So now when you're playing chords on the looper, you play a solo. When you're soloing on the looper, you play chords. And it's a good way to practice just having to make something happen within a shape of, within a limited amount of time, and thinking about what the arc of it would be. If you just turn on your looper and play the rhythm and then just jam along with that, you're just going to tend to play very long, unfocused solos and just kind of jam out. And it's good, that's a useful thing to be able to do on the guitar too. Sometimes somebody will just be like, yo, take it and go as far as you want with it. So that might be something else to practice. But to answer your question, you really need to practice short form improvisation. Think about ending, like focus on ending your solo. That's something that I've found really helpful. If I know I only have 8 bars, don't worry about how to start it. Think more about how I'm going to land it at the end. That's more important. And a good landing can sometimes make the stuff that happened earlier seem to make more sense, to be more logical, because, he must have known what he was doing, because look at how masterfully he landed. I don't know, these are things that have worked for me. I'd also recommend reading some short poems, like haiku poems or sonnets or any kind of short poems, and just start to really appreciate short form things. Try to surround yourself with little short form poems or stories or whatever, and see what other people have done to try to communicate a lot in a short amount of time or space. So already this episode is way too long. Probably nobody's still watching it at this point, but I wanted to answer as many of these questions as I could. As I said, I'll try to get to some of these in another episode, or if there's a way that I can answer just by responding in the comments section from last week, I'll do that. Thank you so much for these great questions. Thank you for tuning in and being part of this channel here with me. As you may know, in addition to YouTube, I also have a subscription channel on Patreon. It's called Guitar Tips Pro. You can just go to the URL guitartipspro.com, or if you're already on Patreon, you can search for me there. I hope you will check it out. It's a cool thing. I'll be back next week. Something that starts with R. Okay, take care.